Hi, this is Scott Garibay, and today I want to talk about Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition, and I want to talk again about WebDM's video. Social skills don't work like that. Charisma rolls don't work like that. I think there's really something important here, and I kind of want to explore this concept with you because I think this is super critical to what Dungeons & Dragons is really about. What the past 47 years have been used for Dungeons and Dragons, and what the next 47 years are going to be used for Dungeons and Dragons. All right, let's get into this. Right, so it's kind of exciting. So basically, Jim Davis over on WebDM, sans Pruitt kind of dropped off like a vestigial nub recently, and so basically he's saying, hey, charisma rolls are a major problem because the reality is, what do we do with them? Like we what happens if a player's like, I don't want to say the part, I don't want to say the words, I just want I want a charisma roll to see if I can persuade this person, right? And generally, a lot of DMs have a big problem with this. They're like, you got to role play it, man. Like, and some players are coming back and they're like, hey, schmuckety schmuck over here just did a divine smite on that creature, and you didn't ask them to get up and show him how you use the sword, right? Like how he swung the sword, right? Like, and so it is a very major issue in Dungeons and Dragons, right? So the reason why I want to talk about this today is I've already talked about it once, but Jim Davis talked for a long time about this, and I think he came at it from a very mechanical perspective and was like, well, blah blah blah, do this, do that, right? But the reality is, I think let's get to the essence. Let's get to the essence of the problem, right? Here's the essence. This is the essence of the problem. In Dungeons and Dragons, right, you can do a one roll major, all caps, right, kill. One roll, major, all caps kill. And I think you could do this like through 20th level, right? So how do you do it? Well, first of all, you need if the DM sets up a wizard as the final boss, right? And the fighter gets in position, right? Just by movement, no rolls, right? The fighter gets into position and they have a weapon that gives them a weapon that has exactly the type of damage that the wizard is currently vulnerable to, right? And then the fighter crits, right? And they're using some kind of special, a magical weapon. It is very possible to end a campaign with a single roll, right? So when it comes to combat, you can take the life of the major NPC, like the big bad. You can take their life and end the campaign with a single roll, right? And everyone in Dungeons and Dragons is totally okay with this. Everybody at the table cheers, right? And it's like, yeah, we did it, and everybody's happy, and it's accepted in Dungeons and Dragons. But here's the issue, right? So let's put it this way. So you have, so that same wizard, right? His henchman is right there with him, right? And he says, and the henchman is like, and so basically the bard comes up and says, turn your back on your master and take your place in the new, all of your past deeds will be forgiven. Take your place with the new power base, join us and defy your master, right? Don't die with him, live with us, right? And he says it better than that, right? And then, and the reality is, and then he gets his roll. Most people are like, hey, this henchman served with this wizard forever. You can't do that with a single roll, right? And so in Dungeons and Dragons, we are not comfortable with a one roll conversion, right? Like, once I was lost, now I am saved. Like literally a 180 going against 100% going against everything that non-player character believes in, right? We don't do it, right? Like, and most dungeon masters right now are like, no. You can't take somebody who's diametrically opposed to what you're saying and convert them 100%, right? And the reality is, I think that's wrong. I think it's 100% wrong, right? I also will go one step further. And actually, this isn't on Jim. I think he was just talking about and actually, not everybody understands the 3 pillars of Dungeons & Dragons: combat, interaction, and exploration. So we've talked about combat and we've talked about interaction, but here's the issue, right? So, the quester comes out and he says, when you go past the Hotanel Mountains and you go farther north, and when you've reached the pass where the three-eyed giant is carved in stone on the icy mount, then you shall go around, and he keeps going. He's like, there's 3 or 4 more, like, arcane, puzzles and, like bib-bobs to say, there you will find the entrance to the secret cave where the magical sword is located, right? And I just saw an amazing movie. I highly recommend it. It was really, really good. It's called A Boy Called Christmas. And basically, his father and him, both at different times, quest to where Santa's village is, right? And when they get there, it's just, they get there and you can't even see it, right? Like, because they get to the right location, but if you don't believe you can't see it and you just pass right through, right? Super hard to find this location, right? This secret location, right? And in Dungeons & Dragons, like, if you have a player character and they're like, I'm going to go to the Neverwinter Library and I'm going to, I wrote down the entire riddle and I'm going to study for 2 weeks and I'm going to make a single roll, and we're not going to quest and do a whole bunch of stuff to find this. We're not going to do 3 quests to figure out where this is. I'm going to do this in a single roll. I'm going to discover an ancient secret location in a single roll. And DMs are like, you can't do that, right? You can't do that, right? We're totally okay with player characters ending a campaign, right, by defeating the big bad by taking their life with a single roll. But the vast majority of DMs right now absolutely will not allow a 100% conversion, right? A player character to completely forsake everything they believe in and join forces with the player characters or do something 180 degrees against their core beliefs, right? We won't allow single roll conversions, persuasions. We just won't allow it. Right, and most people are like, no, it's not. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. You can't do that. And we can't. And we also just simply will not allow single roll discoveries. Right, quests that would normally take, 3, 4, 10 rolls. Right, and we just won't allow these. We won't allow single roll major discoveries. We won't allow single roll major conversions. I think that's the best word. Right, to 180. A non-player character completely, right, on what they believe and who they are, their core fundamental beliefs, right? And here's the thing, what we do, our actions, who we are, do we hold on those less carefully than we hold on to our lives, right? These super secret locations, is it, do we believe in the power of the written word, right? So I don't think it's wrong that we allow a big bad who just gets caught in the wrong circumstance, right? The fighter is in position, somebody's already flanked him, and in addition to that, they have a weapon and that has a damage type that the wizard is vulnerable to at the moment, and they crit, right? Now, if we will allow an entire campaign to end, right, because the big bad was killed with because a 1 roll major kill happens to them, why won't we allow bards and rangers to do 1 roll conversions and to do 1 roll discoveries? It's wrong. Now, this is what I think is super, super important. The reason we won't allow this is because for 47 years, we've done nothing but combat. We've done nothing but build out the combat section of the game, right? And so there are literally, there's 11 million. The last count, I think, was in 2019, and they knew that there were 11 million dungeon masters and dungeon players in the world, people who play Dungeons and Dragons. I'd say half of them know a ridiculous amount about ancient weapons, fighting tactics, war, lore, and I know what barding is, like the armor on a horse, and like just a ridiculous amount. I know what a destrier is. I have a ridiculous amount of knowledge about combat, like about ancient manual combat that came from Dungeons and Dragons. And there are people who dwarf my knowledge, right? Just utterly dwarf my knowledge. There are people who have written books on like just minor subjects, that are just like one aspect of combat in Dungeons and Dragons. But we have neglected exploration and interaction. And I'll tell you right now, I think the reason why is I think a lot of dungeon masters are terrified about dropping combat, right, and studying combat, which, come on, manual combat's so utterly useless today. It's like, what are you going to use it for? It's stupid, right? Like, like we've progressed as a species where either there isn't going to be any combat or the combat is going to be swift, right? And you will never even see what drops you in the dirt, right? Like, trust and believe, like, yeah. So like manual combat is silly at this point, right? But if we put the same focus on exploration and on interaction that we have put onto combat, you're going to get people who know how to persuade people. That's not a small, useless skill, right? That's incredibly important, right? If you get people who are like, oh, I'm, really going to become an expert on exploration, the vast majority of our oceans are unexplored. Like, we barely know what's on any of the planets in our galaxy, right? These are incredibly useful things, right? So we need to get the game to where there's these incredibly ornate, huge I think we should consider getting the game to where there's this incredibly ornate build structure. To tell the truth, yeah, this is interesting. For a long time, I wanted to simplify and get combat simplified. That's never going to happen. I don't think we're going that direction, right? So why not then make the other parts of the game just as ornate, right? So why don't we make it so that you can like power build an exploration build, power build an interaction build, and these people are just converting and discovering like crazy. I think this is a really fascinating concept, and I really think the reason we haven't gotten here is cowardice. I think a cowardice on the part of a lot of dungeon masters, and they're like, "Oh, I don't want to deal with human beings. I'd much rather determine if a British longsword did D8 or D6." And we choose these areas of study so that we remain unchanged. But that's what I'm saying is like, let's use Dungeons and Dragons to change ourselves, to make ourselves better, for the table, for the D&D community, for America, and for the world by extension. We need to go, what we're doing has to go beyond the table. It's not enough, right? And I think that's one of the reasons why we've been so stuck on combat and not willing to get into these incredibly ornate, complex builds for exploration and on the interaction side, right? In fact, right now, the bard is a joke, right? But the bard should be the most important class, right? So that's all my opinion. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Let me know in the comments below. Please consider liking and subscribing, and have a wonderful millennium.